It's college football season, which means you need the unbeatable coverage of Sling TV starting at just $35 a month. Sling has all the big games on all the biggest channels like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, SEC Network, ACC Network, Fox, Big Ten Network, Pac-12 Network, and the Longhorn Network, all for the best price. You can stream on any device, record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space, and pause or change your service at any time. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the live TV you love at a price you'll love. Try it today.
Hello, everybody. This is going to be extremely explicit. So if you don't like swearing or angry people from Wisconsin, then turn your mother effing camera off now. I've been calling Green Bay, Appleton, Fond du Lac, and the outlet in Oshkosh.
Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. I think you know what state we're headed to now. We're going to Wisconsin. We got Jesse Temple, the Athletics of Wisconsin beat writer. Ari Wasserman, of course, is here. We got to talk Badgers as Brett Bielema returns to Camp Randall Stadium this week. But I think there's a better big picture discussion to be had about Wisconsin and ceiling and Paul Chryst and just what is good and what is acceptable and when you know things need to change. And this is all stuff that Jesse's been dealing with quite a bit with his readers. And I think nationally we have been a little slow to recognize that within the Wisconsin fan base, there's some anger, about as much anger as that lady who was mad at Bath and Body Works. That is apparently a classic 10-year-old YouTube rant from a lady who was looking for two particular candles in the 2 for $20 sale. And she tried all those stores, and then something bad happened at the Appleton store where she did not get her candles. And then recently an actress decided to reenact it with the video. Have you seen
the whole video?
I watched it yesterday. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was mesmerized. It's 10 minutes long. I watched the whole thing.
Okay, so I want to start the show by asking Jesse a simple yet ferocious question. But let me preface this question by telling you, I covered the Texas A&M game on Saturday night, so I did not watch the Wisconsin-Ohio State game. But I looked at the box score and then tuned in. I looked at the live updates, and it was 21-0, in the first quarter, I think, or something. And I'm just going to ask, does Wisconsin stink?
Ari comes right to the point.
Do they stink?
We were gonna grab ass around that for 15 minutes.
There's going to be a ton of layers that I imagine we get to with this discussion about where Wisconsin is as a program. But to answer the basic question of whether the Badgers stink, no. The problem is you go and play at Ohio State in front of 100,000 people, and you see that Ohio State is operating on an entirely different level. It's like Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. Wisconsin is not in that realm, and it's not even close. And my biggest issue with having to watch that game was nobody expected Wisconsin to win. The Badgers were 19-point underdogs. That was the biggest point spread against the Badgers in the last 25 years. So you don't have to win that game, but for God's sake, you've got to be competitive. And it was 28-0 before Wisconsin crossed midfield. So it's sort of an indictment on where Wisconsin is as a program. But there's another part where you have to kind of separate what happened in that game to what Wisconsin is capable of relative to the rest of the Big Ten and potentially in college football. That's a long way of saying they were not good in any way, in any phase against Ohio State, but no, the Badgers are not bad.
Well, you got to qualify it for them, Andy. Stinking in relation to what Wisconsin should be, I think, is probably a better way.
But this is where this is coming from. So this is what inspired this discussion. You can read along with your Dear Andy mailbag if you're listening to this in podcast form on Thursday. You can read along because this is the lead question of my Dear Andy mailbag, and I called Jesse when I got this question because I wanted to make sure I wasn't mischaracterizing anything. I'd been reading what he's been writing. The comments under his stories are very informative if you'd like to take kind of the temperature of the Wisconsin fan base. And I thought this question from a reader named Joe was really interesting. So let me read you the question, and you kind of see what Wisconsin fans are wrestling with. And I imagine even if you're not a Wisconsin fan, you may see some of this in your own program. It's a really interesting discussion. So this is from Joe, Badger fan here. As the years go by, it feels more and more like the 2017 Orange Bowl game was the high watermark for the Paul Chryst era in Madison. That would be the turnover chain my bleep and bleep game. That was a team on the rise that won a New Year's Six game, and it led to a Rose Bowl appearance the next year. The results have been mixed and disappointing since then, especially in the development of Graham Mertz. Is there any scenario where the Badgers would or should move on from Chryst? Who would the alternative even be? It feels like the program is stuck, but I'm not sure as to what direction they should go in or if it can really change at all. Is the current state of the program, win 7 or 8 games, maybe compete in the Big Ten West, as good as it can get for Wisconsin football? And I think it's a great question about ceiling and identity. And when you know your identity, do you dare stray away from it? I mean, this is what got Nebraska in trouble. This sort of thinking.
I need to hop in here.
Yeah.
Because Wisconsin was playing a game 2 years ago, and I tweeted something about this style of offense isn't good for the long term. And I got absolutely crucified for suggesting that Wisconsin doesn't stick with the path of what Wisconsin is. And I think there's some merit to that. So I'm very curious, like, it's going to be funny, like picturing just a completely different, like Jamie Chadwell going up there and taking over the job. Like, could Wisconsin do that, or do they have to be this Wisconsin?
Well,
and that's what I want.
Yeah, this is what Jesse and I talked about this morning. So Jesse, I want to kind of turn it over to you because you've been covering this program, understand it better, way better than we ever will. What is the main source of the angst for the fan base right now, and when did that kind of start?
Okay, so here's what it is. Paul Chryst right now, he's won 72.8% of his games as the head coach. But a lot of that success was built on the earlier years, 4 of his first 5 years. It was touched on in that question, but in 2016, the year before that Orange Bowl season, Wisconsin went to the Cotton Bowl, beat an undefeated Western Michigan team led by PJ Fleck. 2017, as you said, go to the Orange Bowl. They went 13-1. They were at midfield against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, down by 6 points. If the Badgers score a touchdown, they go to the college football playoff. They were 4th in the rankings entering that game. And then in 2019, went back to the Big Ten championship, lost to Ohio State, but still went to the Rose Bowl. There would be no conversation like this at all after that, or even in 2020. But it's what's happened since then that has created so much angst among the fan base. Even in that 2019 season, there was a stretch where Wisconsin lost as 30.5-point favorites on the road against Illinois, then lost at Ohio State. Since that loss to Illinois, Wisconsin is 13-10 against Big Ten teams. The Badgers are 4-10 against nationally ranked teams. So this is all about expectations and what Wisconsin is now juxtaposed against where the Badgers were just a few years ago. Because for Wisconsin, it hasn't been like in Ohio State or at Georgia where it's every year it's get to the college football playoff, give yourself a chance to win a national championship. It's, can you win double-digit games? Can you win the Big Ten West? Can maybe every few years, like in 2017, you put yourself in position to actually win a conference championship. And when you get to that level a few years ago and it starts to fall off, then you start to ask, what is the ceiling for Wisconsin? And is Paul Chryst the right man to lead you going forward? Because these last few years, clearly, you could say they're further away now than where they were in 2019. They weren't great in 2020. That was the COVID year. I'm willing to give Wisconsin a pass for that because like half the team got COVID. There were a lot of injuries. I know every program in the country dealt with it, but Wisconsin was pretty hard hit. Last year in the regular season finale, they're playing Minnesota. And if the Badgers win that game, they go to the Big Ten championship game. Wisconsin lost. That's pretty uncharacteristic from the Badgers. So you stack those 2 seasons on top of the fact Wisconsin right now is 2-2. It's not just losing to Ohio State. As I said, it's the way you lost to Ohio State. And 2 weeks ago, you lost at home to Washington State as 17.5-point favorites. So that is the general, I guess, discussion that we're having here. There's a lot more to it. But Wisconsin for so long beat all the teams it was supposed to beat. And now you're starting to wonder, can the Badgers continue to do that? And what will the ceiling be moving forward?
So from a 30,000-foot view and, from far away, I always just felt like Wisconsin's over-under win total every year, no matter what, was either 9.5 or 10.5.
Yeah.
Like they would just win. They won a lot of games, and I know that this conversation's coming off the heels of the Ohio State game, but I've never judged Wisconsin based on the results of that game. I've judged Wisconsin on the heels of just how they're supposed to be or typically would be dominating the Big Ten West. And it seems like they're dropping games the last few years that they would never have dropped, 2-3 years ago. It just seems like we're using the Ohio State game as like, oh my God, but it's just like, that was never the bar. The bar was just to beat Illinois. And I know there's some questions about whether that's going to happen this weekend. It's like, that wouldn't have been a question 3 years ago.
Well, let's throw some numbers out with Illinois, because this is really interesting. So if Paul Chryst wins this game, he will move into second place on the all-time Wisconsin wins list, tied with Brett Bielema. Brett Bielema was 68-24 at Wisconsin. Paul Chryst 67-25. So one game behind Brett Bielema after the same number of games coached. And my thing with this, Jesse, is I'm more concerned if they lose to Illinois, if they lose to Minnesota again, that people are out Wisconsining Wisconsin in their backyard. Like, that would be more of a concern for me than, this style, because the style will work. Like, they have an identity, it works. But the thing is, if somebody does you better than you do you might have to figure out how to get back to doing you better.
You're firmly in the don't change the style mode. You're like,
no, I think their identity is perfect for where they are and what they are.
So I very much agree with you. Obviously, when Barry Alvarez came here, this athletic department was in shambles, and you've seen what the Badgers have been able to build. And one of the reasons they're able to consistently beat a lot of these other teams in what you might consider toss-up games, or the fact that the Badgers are favored in the Big Ten West, is for exactly the reason you addressed. They've got an identity. They know their style of play. They're a run-first team. They play very sound defense, obviously the Ohio State game notwithstanding. And they hit occasional play-action passes, and so they can keep you a little bit honest, but they just execute very well. And as you and I were talking earlier in the day, Andy, it's a completely different conversation that we're having if, in fact, Wisconsin somehow does lose to Illinois, and if the Badgers do lose to the Gophers in the regular season finale, because that's a Minnesota program that Wisconsin beat 14 consecutive years. If Minnesota goes into Madison and wins, not only would it be the second time that they have come to Madison and won since 2018, it'd be the third time they've beaten Wisconsin in the last 5 games. So it's not really fair from a Wisconsin standpoint to compare the Badgers to Ohio State. Certainly you expect a more competitive game, but it is totally fair to expect Wisconsin to be a contender every year in the Big Ten West, especially in a year like this where no one has really stood out. Minnesota is the only team that's won all of its games, and that right now is the team you would say is the favorite to win the Big Ten, but they've got the Big Ten West, but they've got to go to Madison. So yes, if you get out Wisconsin by some of these other teams, I think the conversation that we're having turns up another notch, in the athletic department and the AD maybe has to just start thinking about. I don't think Paul Chryst, first of all, he is not on the hot seat now. I don't necessarily believe he'd be on the hot seat after a season that goes 8-4, even though the Badgers were 8-4 last year. But you certainly do have to start evaluating what the direction of the program could be if you start losing to those teams. And if it happens another year, then I think you've got some issues.
Well, and so a couple folks in our live chat, we have Craig and David both asking about the offensive line. They're talking about, why is the line mediocre? I'm looking at a picture on my wall of like Tyler Biadasz and Michael Dieter and, offensive linemen of the past. And it was their hallmark. They just mauled you up front. They reset the line of scrimmage. The backs didn't have to work that hard to find a hole. And it's been a while since we've seen that. Like that 2020 Michigan game feels like the last time I can remember a Wisconsin offensive line just dominating a game.
Yeah, obviously a lot's happened since then. Joe Rudolph did a lot for this program. He was the offensive line coach, and he left after the last season to take over the O-line at Virginia Tech. And they brought in Bob Bosted, who was coaching linebackers at Wisconsin for the last 5 years. He was in charge of Wisconsin's O-line during the so-called glory days of 2010, 2011. Like that, those were the 2 best offensive line Wisconsin has ever had. This year in particular, I think some of the issues have to go with the lack of continuity. I'm not trying to make excuses for Wisconsin. Like the offensive line has to be better. That is the bread and butter that the Badgers have relied on for so long.
The butter burger, if you will.
The butter burger. I know we'll get to that. I know you got to eat a lot of butter burgers, although the line used to love Red Robin. I think you can't go wrong anywhere that serves you massive burgers and fries, but
bottomless fries, Jesse. Show some
bottomless
respect.
fries. I went with him.
He went with them. Yeah.
No, I know, but I just like when you talk about it. I mean, just
get it right. I understand. Get it right, or pay the price. Yeah,
we're journalists.
But they've had like Jack Nelson, their starting left tackle. He was injured. He didn't play against Ohio State. Riley Mahlman, who's one of their best tackles, emerged as a starter. He's been injured. So Against Ohio State, you had to flip Logan Brown from right tackle to left tackle. You had different starters at right guard and right tackle. There's a lot of talent there. I think continuity has to do with it at least a little bit. But coming into this season, on paper, this was the most talented offensive line that Wisconsin had from a recruiting ranking standpoint. I know you can't judge everything on that, but the number of 4- and 5-star guys in there made you think they should be blowing people away, and that's not what's happening. So
is Nolan Rucci even on the field yet?
Not yet, no. And he's one of the 2 5-star players that they had. He was the number 1 player in Pennsylvania. Logan Brown, the other 5-star player. And I think the thing that's frustrating in part for Badgers fans is so rarely do the Badgers get 5-star players. Logan Brown was a 5-star signee in the 2019 class. He was the first 5-star signee Wisconsin had in 12 years. And so you start to think about, oh, what could this mean? You start getting guys like this. And Logan's in his 4th year in the program, and he's only now a starter, and it hasn't been as consistent as you would have liked. So I think there's a few different reasons, but they clearly have to fix some things there because they need their running game to be able to dominate.
So if you are a Wisconsin person, and you said we're a few years away from this, and I believe it to be true, but if you are getting a new coach or thinking about getting a new coach, what do? Just go find the best offensive line coach in America? Like, how do you even create I feel like Wisconsin would be, you know how we had I'm actually talking like I'm from Wisconsin now, where I start sentences and don't finish them, right? Or is that a Minnesota Fargo thing?
I'm going to leave you hanging on that.
I was going to say, I'm going to let you stereotype the upper Midwest all you want.
Well, Fargo is one of the greatest shows ever made in the history of television, and they do it a lot on the show. So I haven't spent a lot of time up there other than
Doesn't most of the first season take place in Minneapolis?
Whatever it is, it's all that area.
I know. I'm just joking.
Madison and Minneapolis are the same place in my head. So,
I'm glad you haven't offended the entire upper Midwest.
Yes. Ari likes to paint with a broad brush, everybody.
No, I know. I'm just teasing you guys. But I do think, like, when we did the Georgia Tech Jeff Collins podcast last week, Andy, we came up with like 12 different candidates that would be awesome or potentially awesome for Georgia Tech. And it's like, if you do the same thing for Wisconsin, I'm just like, I don't know. Does it have to be somebody from the Wisconsin tree?
Well,
could be somebody on their staff currently.
Right, currently, exactly. So
yeah,
I think we should start with this. And Andy mentioned this, I think, briefly earlier. Is if you're going to make a change, in my mind, you better be damn sure you got someone coming in who could win 73% of the games and elevate this program. Because I always think you run the risk if you make a rash decision of going in the wrong direction. And I know the circumstances aren't entirely apples to apples, but I think looking at Nebraska and what happened with Bo Pelini is reasonable only from the standpoint of Pelini was, I think, 66-27 at Nebraska, generally won 9+ games. Obviously, there were other reasons why Nebraska moved on, but the athletic director, Sean Eichhorst, at the time basically said that we weren't winning the games that mattered. And I'm trying to remember the exact number. I know I had it in the story. I think Nebraska's 35-51 since then. So not only are they not winning the games that matter, they're not winning the other games either. I'm not saying that's going to happen at Wisconsin, but to me, it's in part a bit of a cautionary tale about if you make a change, it doesn't always work out the way that you think it's going to work out. But to answer your question directly about who the options would potentially be, the first one that fans would say is, why don't you hire Jim Leonard, the defensive coordinator? He's been an outstanding coordinator here, one of the best in the country. He's had overtures for a lot of other positions. He turned down the defensive coordinator role with the Green Bay Packers last year. But this goes back to, what does Wisconsin as an athletic department, as Chris McIntosh, the athletic director, believe in? And I just don't see them dropping a coach, again, who's won as many games as Paul Chryst has at this point. But that would be the first choice. And even if Jim Leonard ultimately does leave, which I don't know that he's going to stay here forever as defensive coordinator, he may want to challenge himself in another way. Whenever Paul Chryst is done coaching, he would be the very first call that you would make at Wisconsin, because he's a former player. He was a walk-on from the state of Wisconsin, became a 3-time All-American. He had a 10-year NFL career. He's been an incredible assistant coach here. So he understands everything Wisconsin is about. That, to me, is sort of where it starts and ends. But then it's fun to play this game and go down the list, because I think there are more coaches than you might think that at least have ties to Wisconsin. Lance Leipold at Kansas, whose name is probably getting thrown around for every position. He was at Whitewater.
Fans.
No, wait a minute. I'm from Kansas. I went to the University of Kansas.
Yes.
I know the Jayhawks and the culture, and it's been incredible what he's been able to do. But obviously, what I'm saying is, he's had success at a lot of places. And so I think that's a name that would come up. There's a lot of coaches that I don't know that Wisconsin could necessarily afford to pay or that the coach would want to come. But like, Dave Aranda and Justin Wilcox. And I mean, those guys work.
Does Dave Aranda move to Wisconsin and turn into the cheese curds of?
I'm just giving you names of people with ties to the pro. Yeah, but you made it seem like it's ridiculous.
Say stick with the plan and be who you are and never stray from that, and then go hire Dave Aranda.
He brought the 3-4 defense to Wisconsin that they're still using.
But they're not. But it's not what they are, though.
Actually, you could be that physical upfront presence. That's the offense Dave Aranda has been using to great success at Baylor. The first year sucked. They changed the offense, and now Wisconsin's not a big outside zone team. It's just like they're not a big wide zone team.
I'm not saying they're going to go high Dave.
No, I'm just saying, even if they did, that's not in line.
It actually is very much in line. What Baylor is right now in the Big 12 is actually very much in line with Wisconsin's identity in the Big 12.
I understand what Baylor wants. Okay, if you think that that's the guy, that's that.
I'm not saying that. I'm just
Wisconsin more than Dave Aranda.
You don't have to scream Wisconsin. Like,
yes, you do.
You don't have to have cheese curds in your blood.
Yeah,
it's not necessary.
Okay. Yeah, I know that they're a very physical team and they win Big 12 games by winning up front. Like, I understand that. But like when I think of Wisconsin, like I think of Paul Chryst. It's like burnt in my brain. Like I can't even imagine.
Well, you have to let that go. There's other people that can win in different places.
No, but I do feel like if you want to stay into that same realm.
Brett Bielema is not from Wisconsin. He won the Big Ten a few times there.
Well, how about Brett Bielema? He comes up, he drops Wisconsin this weekend. He's looking for a job.
No, he's not coming back.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Ever?
Well, he's got to come back for this weekend.
lot of burned bridges, and on a town that's an isthmus, you can't have burned bridges.
Yeah, I do think it's fair to ask. It's not always a slam dunk guarantee that you're going to bring in somebody who is, I mean, a Nick Saban or whatever. Like when Brett Bielema left, Wisconsin brought in Gary Anderson. Obviously, it didn't wind up working out. He wound up leaving, and it's been a bizarre journey for him. But, if you thought about the top candidates for a job at that time, Gary Anderson had success at Utah State, but it's not like they were bringing in Dabo or somebody of that level. So I don't necessarily know that you'd have. It's not like every top 10 coach or 20 coach in America would be lining up saying, I want to go coach at Wisconsin. It's a great program. They do a lot of things well, but there is a culture and a system that I do think in large part you've got to adhere to. You've got to understand what's made this program successful. And I do think this is a legitimate thing that you've got to deal with at Wisconsin is the access to talent. Ari is Mr. Talent Matters, Stars Matter, 5 stars, 4 stars usually win. And Wisconsin's had a lot of success. But the access to talent up here in terms of like in-state, it's just different. And the challenge is different. That doesn't mean you can't succeed. But I think you've got to understand that when you come here, that it's just a little bit different.
Wisconsin's style is what you do when you don't have access to talent, right? That's the whole thing.
That I think that's reasonable because, you've got to out execute teams. And it's not like you see it against Ohio State. The best athletes on the field, you get them in speed and space and it's all over. And they don't have a bunch of players like that. So I think that is certainly part of it. And that's why Barry Alvarez had so much success was he understood exactly what you needed to do to give yourself a chance up here. And Brett Bielema, I talked to him about this several times, but when he took over for Barry, or actually when Brett was a defensive coordinator and he was learning to recruit the state, he asked Barry for advice. And it was like, you go to the state of Wisconsin, there's a bunch of big Scandinavian dudes. There's 6'6", 250-pound guys sacking groceries at your local grocery store. That's the access to talent that you have here. You get the big hog mollies and you build everything around that. But it's not as easy to go and get, the speedy guys down south to come up to Wisconsin. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm excuse making because other programs have found success, but I just want to make it clear that there are some barriers to entry at Wisconsin that other programs don't necessarily have to deal with.
It's perfectly understandable. And the thing is, I've always thought people at Wisconsin, the fan base, was very accepting of the ceiling, like understood that, hey, 10 wins a year may be the ceiling, or, maybe 11 sometimes in a really good year, but not necessarily competing for the national title because the access to talent does not allow for that. That's my question is, are they still mostly that way? Or is there a subset that says, well, no, you need to be able to compete with the Ohio States?
I don't know how many people fans say you need to be able to consistently compete with Ohio State, because there's really no evidence over history that Wisconsin has consistently beaten Ohio State. The Buckeyes have won 9 straight games now. Wisconsin hasn't beaten Ohio State since 2010, when the Buckeyes were number 1 in the country. Like, as a Wisconsin program, you go in and you beat Ohio State wherever it is. That's a game that fans talk about for decades because it's that big of a deal. But I do think it's an interesting question, the idea of what is the ceiling for Wisconsin. And it goes back to expectations. It always goes back to expectations. When this program was terrible in the 70s and 80s, people would have killed for the Badgers to go to a bowl game. That was a big deal. And then all of a sudden they started going to the Rose Bowl and they started winning the Big Ten championship. And then when they got close under Paul Chryst to the college football playoff, as I said, during a 4-year stretch, they were in the top 8 in the playoff rankings 3 of those years. It felt like they were right on the cusp, and they haven't gotten any closer. And I think that's where the frustration is. My personal opinion of what the ceiling is for Wisconsin is there's going to be a 12-team playoff that's coming very, very soon. And to me, that changes everything for a program like Wisconsin, because the Badgers have always been on the outside looking in. They can't compete every year with Ohio State, but they wouldn't necessarily have to win the Big Ten. They would just have to be one of the best 12 teams in the country. During the BCS era, from 1998 until this point, Wisconsin would have been in a 12-team playoff in 8 different years. They haven't gone once.
Yeah, that feels very different to me.
So to me, it's if they can be a top 12 program every few years. And to me, I think
this
that's
is legitimately
why
I'm against the expansion of the playoffs sometimes. That
I'm not necessarily
disagreeing. People from Wisconsin can feel good about themselves.
No, because I actually believe that Wisconsin could make the playoff.
In a 12-team playoff?
In a 4-team playoff.
Well,
and if you think I'm crazy, they were 50 yards away. We were sitting
next to each other when it happened. The right year they could.
And also, if Wisconsin, what was the year that they were at the 50 down 6 in the fourth quarter?
2017.
That was the year they went 13-1, right?
Yes, they were 12-0
If
going into
Wisconsin's
that
team
game.
this past year was that good, which I think is reasonable, that is something that they can duplicate. They absolutely could have beaten Michigan in the Big Ten championship game and gone to the playoff.
Okay. Well, they would have gone once.
Once out of
would you have rather gone 8
years?
times than once? I think 8 times is better.
I wonder if you asked a Wisconsin fan, would you rather make the 4-team field by winning the Big Ten championship once, or would you rather make the 12-team by default 5 times what they would pick?
5 times.
I think they'd pick 5 times, Ari, to be honest with you. I think they'd rather be in the conversation for a 12-team playoff 5
Ari, would you
times.
rather have a twosome or a threesome?
Probably a twosome. I don't think I could handle a threesome.
But my point is they occupy in a weird place in the college football landscape, and that they've been very good, but they haven't quite been elite. And you're right, a 12-team playoff rewards some of the very good, but not necessarily the elite. Wisconsin, I think, would be in position to benefit. But I also think just because they go to a 12-team playoff, I would never expect them to actually win that thing. You got to go back to back to back and beat like 3 of the 5 best teams in the country.
That you can't beat once now?
Yes, I agree. But I'm just saying.
What are we doing?
It's more inclusion.
Trophies.
It's about more inclusion and more money. Look, I'm not here to litigate whether you should have a 4 or 12
They're
team
already
playoff.
handing
I'm here to offer
trophies. They're called bowl games, Ari.
There you go.
It's not like that's a new thing.
I'm here to offer why the ceiling for Wisconsin is what it could be with a 12-team playoff.
But I do
think
that
it changes expectations when that happens.
Of course. And I think that it'll be very interesting to see how expectations at places like Penn State and Wisconsin change once that's the reality of it. My only thing is when you talk about a ceiling, how do you define the ceiling? Do you define it as what the program could be for a long period of time, or what could happen at the best if everything breaks the right way? And I personally believe that the Wisconsin team that is 10.5 wins over under before the year, in the right year when they're clicking like they were in 17, getting matched up with somebody not Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, because it does happen and will happen at least once or twice every 10 years, that there is a certain cross section where the absolute ceiling of the Wisconsin program that you've been covering for the past 5 years is to make the 14 playoff one time.
Yeah,
if Michigan State can do it, Wisconsin can do it.
But here's the thing. Ceiling to me is not what happens if all the stars align. It's if you have the right coach, what are you consistently? Like Auburn is one we're going to talk about a lot probably in the next few weeks when their job opens. Like, what's the ceiling for Auburn? The ceiling for Auburn is the national title. Like, we've seen it. We know it can happen. What is their day-to-day, year-to-year ceiling? That's a better question. Like, that is a more interesting question.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer to that for Wisconsin is that they've been their ceiling then.
Right. They were at their ceiling. And I think that's what they have to come to grips with is, they're not, do they need to find somebody to get them back there? Can Paul Chryst get them back there since he's already had them there? Like that's the question. Gentlemen, we have to pause, but when we come back, the Big Ten Network put out something very interesting that I think says a lot about the programs in the Big Ten and the coaches who run them. Also, it's just hilarious. We will discuss it when we come back. It's college football season, which means you need Sling TV, where you can watch unbeatable college football coverage starting at just $35 a month. Get everything you love about college football, like rivalries, marching bands, bowl games, conference power rankings, all of it with Sling. Plus, Sling has all the big games on all the biggest channels like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, SEC Network, ACC Network, Fox, Big Ten Network, Longhorn Network, Pac-12 Network. Yeah, I was watching USC Oregon State when everybody's like, where do you get the Pac-12 Network? Well, you get it on Sling, all for the best price. The best part is getting Sling is easy. It's easy to set up and even easier to use. You can stream it on any device and record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. Plus, you won't get locked into a long-term contract. So if you're looking for the perfect place to spend your Saturdays, you need to take a look at Sling, where you can get everything you love about college football for the best price. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the live TV you love at a price you'll love. Try it today. Got a new Rowback hoodie, and I got to admit, I like this one even more than my first one. My first one was gray. It's really cool. This one's green. But the problem is I only got the one. And so I've got to hide it. Otherwise, my wife's going to grab it, steal it. It's gone. Why? Because this is the most comfortable hoodie ever made. Rowback's performance hoodies are the most comfortable hoodies out there. They're lightweight, but also so soft that you can't take them off. And really, you don't want to take them off because they will get stolen. So you may as well just get two. But it's not just the hoodies. Rowback's performance polos are outstanding. They've got a college line now where you got some state logos that look like college logos. The colors all blend together. And if you're a fan of a big school, you'll know, and everybody else will know too. Plus, the Rowback folks leading the NIL charge. They've got Will Anderson from Alabama, Bijan Robinson from Texas, Michael Meyer from Notre Dame helping out, spreading the word. They're making the everyday shorts now, which you will want to wear every single day. Oh, and they got joggers now too. If you see somebody rocking that little Rowback dog logo, just kind of give them a nod, because you know you're in this club where you are wearing things that are infinitely more comfortable than what everybody else is wearing. Also, right now, when you go to rowback.com, use the code Andy for a generous 20% off all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all polos, Q-zips, hoodies, and shorts with the code Andy. That's rowback.com, and use the code Andy. And you may just order two hoodies because, again, somebody's going to swipe one. Welcome back. So,
you know what I was thinking the entire break?
What's that?
It was bothering me, and this is why we don't. So Jesse was asking, why don't you guys have a thing? And I know that we got another segment to get to, but I just want to let you know that analogy that you proposed to me about the playoff, I didn't like that analogy. Now that I was thinking about it,
it's a terrible analogy. I just wanted to. I wanted to see your reaction to it.
It's like, and would you rather have perfect. One with a model or two with people from Walmart? I'd pick the model. That's what that is. I'm just like that's what the 14 playoff is with the model. And the 12-team playoff is the consolation prize.
I mean, the 14 playoff is a model like spiking you in the forehead with a high heel and then spitting on you. That's what that is.
Some people are into that sort of thing. I don't know. I just wanted to make sure that we were on track on that because it was irking me.
It was an Ari Wasserman-esque analogy. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
This is why the SAT removed analogies. All right, we got to talk about the Big Ten has put out a video on its social channels that is spectacular. They asked every coach in the Big Ten, what is an NFT? For those who don't know, an NFT is a non-fungible token. It's a moment or an online, a digital thing that you can own, basically. It can be verified by blockchain. And so you may or may not believe it's worth anything. I personally like those NBA Top Shot highlights. I thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. People were paying money for gifts of NBA plays. But if it's worth something to you, who am I to judge? But the Big Ten coaches were asked about NFTs, which are a thing that is, pretty big deal especially in the world of the age group that they deal with. And here were their answers from the Big Ten Network.
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I can kind of explain what I think they are.
NFT?
A non-fungible token?
I'm not for sure.
NFT? I don't even know what that means.
I don't know if it's fortunately, unfortunately. I've learned a lot about NFTs in the last month.
So something to do with blockchain, right?
I have no idea what an NFT is. No.
Basically, like a look-alike, of a player or of a person that you're able to sell.
NFT? No.
NFT? I have no idea.
I think it's exciting. I think it's a little bit of an unknown, but certainly is very progressive and exciting to think about the opportunities that are out there.
Non-fungible token. I know what it means. What's the definition? You tell me.
If you could tell me what it is, I still don't know what that is.
A what? It's an NFT.
With people are buying, like digital art or digital things that you create. It doesn't really make sense to me. Again, that's not my generation.
So Ryan Day knowing exactly what it is and being able to explain it very well, not surprising at all. The biggest upset to me, guys, PJ Fleck not knowing what an NFT was. Like, he had Crypto Bro written all over him.
I feel like it's not surprising that the two who could explain it the best have the recruiting rankings that rank 1, 2 in the Big Ten in the 2022
Yeah,
class.
James Franklin took him a minute, but he got there.
He got it. And you know what? If I was presented with that question on the spot without being prompted before, it might take me a minute to fully hash it out.
Well, Shiano knew what blockchain was. Like that was
he said the word blockchain. I don't know if he knows what it is.
He associated the two. It's more than the other coaches could say.
But I have spent hours reading up on blockchain and probably could not tell you what it is.
Yeah. I put a bunch of money into Bitcoin on this app called Voyager. And Voyager has since filed bankruptcy, and I think I just lost all those assets.
Oh no!
So I think I'm done in that space. If you're a crypto bro, can you please reach out to me and let me know what it's like when your assets disappear out of nowhere? Thanks.
But it was very interesting because Ryan Day, and I imagine Ryan Day's players, especially CJ Stroud, some of the bigger name guys, they've had plenty of offers for NIL deals involving NFTs. And so he's probably had to educate himself just to be able to have those conversations with his players. But Mel Tucker knew what it meant, did not know how to explain it. Mike Loxley didn't know. Kirk Ferentz, did he say MFT or NFT? I can't even remember, but he didn't know.
Here's my thing is it really that big of a deal? Like, it's funny to put that video together and juxtapose Ryan Day. Obviously, he knows what's going on, I guess. But, like, you're the head coach of a football team.
No,
and you really know every single aspect. You got to delegate to people. That's why you've got an entire staff devoted to recruiting and NIL. So I'm not all that up in arms about most of these coaches not having a clue what it even stands for.
Well,
but it is
either of you have any interest whatsoever in owning a digital asset?
Zero.
No. But so I feel like that just makes me old.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, for me, so I've developed, and I think Jesse knows this about me, a very terrible addiction to sports cards recently in the last year.
Right.
But as part of it, you can also buy NFT sports cards. So what makes a sports card valuable a lot of times is when there's a serial number on the back. It tells you exactly how many of those sports cards are printed and what number out of that number. So there's a tangible amount.
Yes.
And you can buy the digital assets of those cards. So you can own a 1 of 1 or a 1 of 50 or a 1 of 100 and so forth of the digital picture of that card. Now, anybody can look at it. But if you own it and it's in your wallet and you have it, that belongs to you. And I think people between the ages of 14 and 25, which none of us are, I think have an interest in owning these assets. So the question
that means something to them. To me, it doesn't mean anything. Like, so what?
Yeah, like that guy that spent $1 million on that LeBron dunk that anybody can just watch on YouTube whenever they want makes zero sense to me. But I think that it's one of those things where it's just like you kind of have to know what you're selling, and if there's money involved in it, like maybe somebody would want to buy an NFT of Graham Mertz. And if he can
Not
make money
lately.
off of it, yeah, and I don't know about now. he has a logo, dude. Okay.
Yeah, he does. I mean,
Pretty nice logo.
Wisconsin had a basketball player last year named Johnny Davis. He was taken 10th so he was a lottery pick, and he had an NFT. He had a card. At least that part I can sort of understand Ari's perspective. You know, owning a card of sorts as opposed to something that everybody can see on Twitter. But I think it's complicated to a lot of people, and it's understandable why they don't know what the answer is to it. And it's just a totally emerging space. Like, this did not exist a few years ago. So coaches are slow.
Give
I
me
think
a
to a lot of
Lambo and my own mustard. That's what I want for my NIL deals.
I have a friend who spent like $3,000 on a picture of an ape.
Wow.
It's so
an
wild.
NFT?
Yeah.
$3,000.
Like D'Anthony Thomas.
There's a lot of people who became millionaires overnight with this stuff, guys.
Remember
because they resold it?
Yeah, they resold it.
Right, they resold
guy who wanted it.
Top of the market, and before. But so do you remember D'Anthony Thomas from Oregon, the receiver, running back, just do everything guy, kick returner?
Yeah,
huge crypto guy now. Like, you follow him on Twitter, it's all Bored Apes all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And apparently, if you own the NFT, then that NFT is almost like a membership card to events and discounts and sort of things. So like when they say NFT, like you might be able to buy a Walmart NFT in 10 years. That if you own that NFT, then you get 20% off of everything in the store. Like
after what you just suggested involving Walmart to me, I'm not sure I want to see.
Take a break from there for a while. yeah. Also, there's some pretty attractive women in Walmart sometimes. I wasn't trying to be mean, but that's, I think
we've all seen the people of Walmart Instagram feed. We know
that's what I was referencing. Yes, I love Walmart. By the way, it's my place. But I think that they're trying to create practical uses for these digital things, so that if you own the digital asset, then you can use that asset to exclusive parties or discounts or access to tickets or what. They're exploring it, and I do believe that in the future there will be membership cards and things that you have, like you have on an Apple Wallet, that you can own, that like grant you access to things.
I have one. It's called my Sam's Club membership.
Yes, and it might be like you might have to pay.
When I walk into the store, I show them my digital wallet with my Sam's Club membership, which has a number that can be authenticated, and they let me in, and I can buy all the giant pretzels I want.
But like, it might be in 10 years where you have to pay Sam's Club $1,000 and then you own this asset. And then when you have this asset, it can appreciate because they're only selling so many of them for people to go to the store, and you can't go in the store unless you have this asset, which you can resell at any point.
Essentially what they do without the resale part. Yes.
Yeah, but at least when you own this thing, at least you get something out of it other than looking at a picture of a monkey. Like, I mean, that doesn't compute to me. But if you buy something that other people want for practical uses, I can understand why somebody would want it.
Can you imagine if we had to describe this to Kirk Ferentz right now? Like, how quickly would he walk out of the room?
I mean, I think he'd probably be happy to talk about anything other than the forward pass right now.
Wait, you don't want to talk about Brian right now? No? Oh, okay. No, let's talk NFTs or MFTs or whatever the hell they're called.
But I do wonder like how it's gonna go, because any single quarter that you can milk out of anything for these guys right now is an important thing for coaches to understand. And like, if you're Kirk Ferentz and some, and maybe the prospects that Kirk Ferentz aren't.
I don't think anybody's going to not go to Iowa because Kirk Ferentz doesn't know what an NFT is.
I know, but there will come a day where he might be recruiting a player, a 5-star prospect like he did last year and got, that asks him, how are you guys going to maximize my name, image, and likeness in NFT, in the NFT space? And he goes, that might not be great. So like, I think it's important to be up with the times that pertains to talking points, because all of these NIL collectives and lawyers and anything that you read about NIL, that there's an NFT space to it there. And, sometimes getting in on the ground, I feel like I'm an Uber driver.
Venn diagram of the people who have decided to become middlemen in the NIL space and crypto bros
is one circle.
Is basically one circle. I mean, maybe there's a little bit. It's not the MasterCard logo. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Not the Olympics logo either, but
exactly.
Yeah, it is funny though that like there is a correlation between the types of players that you're recruiting and the need to know them too. because Harold Perkins might want to know that more than some 3-star kid from Sheboygan, you know?
Say Sheboygan.
Did I say it right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Sheboygan.
Sheboygan. There
Walk
you
You
go.
been there?
I've not been to Sheboygan, no.
There's a lot of places you need to get out in the car.
Did I say
Shout out Sam
Waukesha
Decker.
right?
Yeah, Waukesha. Got it. Some people say it like Waukesha.
The one thing I will say about Wisconsin is that the cheese curd
Yes.
is delicious and generally underutilized across America.
Well,
Like-
listen, we haven't talked enough about Wisconsin graduate Young Gravy, who that song that samples Rick
Fire.
Astley,
Oh yeah.
maybe my favorite song ever because nobody else has rhymed poutine with anything
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
hip hop song. So
But don't you think it's kind of
Manny Pacquiao with Jerry Stackhouse. Tremendous.
exactly.
That might be my favorite rhyme of the year.
Single-handedly, like Vanderbilt basketball recruiting is going to go through the roof because Jerry Stackhouse got name checked by Young Gravy.
Do you think that there is a weird disconnect between how good cheese curds are and how hard they are to access on a given menu everywhere?
Yeah,
don't
they're
feel like they're that hard to
underutilized
access
across the
anymore.
nation.
I don't see cheese curds on menus ever.
See, I feel like they have exploded in availability as poutine has become kind of an in appetizer. And I realize poutine is from Canada, but there is a crossover there with the cheese curd as part of the
Does
ingredients.
cheese curd go in poutine?
You sprinkle it on the gravy with the beef.
Oh, I had a
Right.
poutine in Canada once, and I did not have cheese curds on there. I'm feel like
I think it depends on where you are.
But tell you, since moving to Wisconsin, my standard for a good cheese curd, it's exceptionally high. You know, you can't just walk into a restaurant and they serve you some crappy cheese curd and expect to get my business again. I'll tell you that.
Are you a cheese snob?
I don't know that I'm a cheese snob. I think I might be a cheese curd snob, though. That's the fried cheese curd variety. I'm not talking just regular cheese curd. You fry it up, crispy, delicious. You know, you can mess it up. Surprisingly, you can mess it up. There's some good options up here.
Yeah, the same way there's some good mozzarella sticks and some bad ones.
That's true.
But they're still all
They're all still after 2.5 minutes.
Oh yeah, you're an anti-mott stick guy. That's such a strange, bizarre take.
Because there's 4 seconds where they're the perfect temperature, and otherwise they will destroy the roof of your mouth or they're disgusting little pieces of rubber. Like it's too narrow of a window. That's too much pressure for an appetizer.
You're pro fried cheese curd, but anti-mott stick. Am I getting that right?
Yes, I'm a complicated man, Ari.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you might want to lay down on a couch and talk to somebody about that because that doesn't make any sense.
Speaking of cheese curds, I'm so glad you took us in this direction, Ari. See, this is why,
Yes, that's
Jesse,
why
we
I
don't
did.
have a rundown and why we just meander along. When we come back, we have something we need to present to Jesse. Cheese curds are involved. We need to decide if it is the most Wisconsin thing ever. We'll be right back. One of the hardest parts of getting older is that next morning after you've had something to drink. Used to be you could bounce back, but the older you get, the tougher that gets. But there is a tool that can help make those mornings better and make the rest of that day better. It's called Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. So remember to drink Z-Biotics before drinking alcohol, then drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Give Z-Biotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/Andy to get 15% off your first order when you use Andy at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. And hey, Halloween is right around the corner. If it's anything like my neighborhood, you know you're going to get after it pretty hard. So Z-Biotics is the way to go. You want to give it a try, go to zbiotics.com/Andy and get 15% off your first order when you use the code Andy at checkout. That's zbiotics.com/Andy, code Andy at checkout. In a tiny apartment in Southern California, 2 college dropouts teamed up to create a watch company that broke all the rules. With fair prices, unexpected colors, clean and original designs, Movement grew into one of the fastest growing watch brands, shipping to over 160 countries across the globe. Now Movement has expanded into blue light glasses that protect your eyes from screens, minimalist jewelry, and more style essentials that don't break the bank, all designed out of their California headquarters. I've got the Raptor watch. It is spectacular. People see it and they say, whoa, where did you get that? And they assume I paid hundreds of dollars more than it costs at Movement, because Movement is online. They own their process from start to finish, and they can give you a fair price. Also, I've got a leather card case that I actually started using to carry cash with, because after the pandemic, I realized, oh, I should start carrying cash again. And it's great. It's clean. I don't have that George Costanza wallet feeling in my back pocket. I can throw this in my front pocket and it just sort of blends in seamlessly. And I got my cash right there. If you want to elevate your look and style with great stuff that doesn't break the bank, then join the movement and get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to mvmt.com/Andy. That's mvmt.com/Andy. 15% off today. Free shipping, free returns. mvmt.com/Andy. Welcome back to a very special Wisconsin edition of the Andy Staples Show. I don't think we need to do this more often, where we feature one state, Ari.
It doesn't have to be the program. It has to be the state. Craig Smith wants me to pronounce a word, and I've been trying to read it the entire break, and I can't do it.
Go for it. Hold on. Let me put it on screen.
Jesse, do you know how to say this word?
Yes.
Andy, do you?
Nope.
Give it a shot, Ari.
Oconomowoc.
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 Did I get it right?
Yeah.
What I said, it wasn't even English.
There's some tough ones. Yeah.
I feel like we've done this show specifically for Craig. Craig has the old Milwaukee Brewers logo, which is the greatest logo in the history of sports, because it looks like a baseball glove, but it is an M and a B with a baseball in the middle of it.
Do you know what I do love about the show, though, guys? Is that we dove in on Wisconsin and their style and who they are, but I think that's applicable to plenty of fans that aren't Wisconsin fans. Like, you can apply a lot of the things that I think we think about Wisconsin to your favorite team if you have a similarly, situated program that's your favorite.
Nebraska fans are just gnashing their teeth because they would love to be Wisconsin. That's at this point. And we've talked, like Arizona State and Georgia Tech, who we've talked about a lot because the jobs just opened. The idea of identity, especially Georgia Tech, which had a very defined identity, went away from it. And now I don't think they're going to go back to it, but there's a danger in moving away from a defined identity. And that's why, Jesse, you and I talked about this earlier, and we've talked about this a few times, where Wisconsin's not a knee-jerk type of place. Exactly. The administration. That's not how they operate. And I think that's for the better. I think that helps that program stay consistent and stay good, because they're not going to do something crazy that you can't walk back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think the concern from some people, and again, it's sometimes tough to decipher what you're seeing in the comments section of your stories versus how many fans in the stadium on Saturday feel exactly the same way. But there's a thought that if they are slow to action, that they then take too long, and then you're past your prime and it's too late to get it back because you've slipped so far. And I don't think Wisconsin is there right now. But no, they're not going to act rashly, even if it's, again, as I said, if it's not a great season this year. I don't think they're going to make some drastic change with the head coach after this season. But I do think you have to start paying attention if you're sliding backward and if you start slipping in the Big Ten West. That's why they've got 8 games left. That's the other thing, is it's easy to make these knee-jerk reactions in the middle of the season. Wisconsin started 1-3 last year and then won the rest of the games until the regular season finale. It's happened in a few different seasons over the years. So I think it's a conversation we can have.
Minnesota's really good this year too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if that does happen, fans will lose their minds if Wisconsin loses again to Minnesota. Because
I think if they play tomorrow, they're 7-point dogs, right?
Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't pick the lines in Vegas, Ari. You know this.
I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't think they're going to be favored to win the game this year.
Probably
if things continue this direction.
Which is wild to me, because I marked that as a win for Wisconsin every year.
Well, it says a lot about what PJ Fleck has been able to do for the program, and obviously Wisconsin kind of been stagnant and moving backwards a little bit. But I know we can have that conversation in late November. It's going to be a big one, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, we need to have a conversation now about this photo that Ari sent me after I told him that you were coming on with us, Jesse. This was immediately what he sends me. That is a man proposing to a lady in front of a Culver's, and he actually got the Culver's sign to say, "April, will you marry me? Love, DJ." He's wearing a Packers jersey, by the way. Is this the most Wisconsin image ever committed to, well, I guess it's not film, but digital media?
It's got to be up there. I have to say, this is a hell of a lot better than when you go to a baseball game and it's on the stadium in front of 40 or 50,000 fans. Like, this is intimate. This is what it's all about, really. And I give him mad props for hooking it up and figuring out how to put that on the screen and how to get her in front of it. So this has got to be up there on a most Wisconsin proposal, and I give him full props.
You know,
do they have cheese curds at the wedding?
You have to. It has to be catered by Culver's.
I would think so, yes.
I have a buddy who I don't know what the reason is, but they have a sentimental, like, I think he and his wife now, like, were, you know, kind of up against it financially when they first met, and their first anniversary or their first date was Arby's, which sounds terrible. Like, take a woman to Arby's.
There's a Seinfeld episode all about that.
Yeah, but like, now they go every year that they're married and they're like doing well. They still go to Arby's every year for their anniversary, and I always thought that was sweet.
Hey, listen, the big roast beef slaps. So a little curly fry action.
Are you a cheddar melt guy, or are you just?
Oh yeah, cheddar melts are so good.
They are. Arby's does.
Okay,
slap.
so the question is, what other states could you do this in? Like, could you do it? Well, obviously Culver's is now national. Like, where I live in Florida, we have a Culver's right down the street. But like, if you're in North Carolina, do you do this at a Bojangles? Is that the same thing? Or I guess not, a cookout might be more North Carolinian than Bojangles even. If you're in LA, do you do it at In-N-Out? Like, if you're at Nebraska, if you're in Nebraska, do you do it at a Runza?
It's at a Runza, no doubt about it.
This
I was
one just
expressing
seems
my
to hit
feelings about
differently
Runza earlier.
Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
Well,
go ahead.
To all the Nebraska fans listening, I'd like to apologize in advance. You only get one chance to make a first impression. I was in Lincoln a few years ago. I thought, let me experience everything that Nebraska has to offer outside of Memorial Stadium. And I went to Runza. And maybe the food was old. Maybe the cook was mad that day. Maybe they didn't even have a cook. Maybe it was like a waiter that had to step in. I don't know what the hours were. It was probably the worst fast food meal I've ever had. I took it to Twitter. I made it known. Nebraska fans were less than thrilled. But I made it out. And you know what? They're going back to Lincoln this year. And I'm willing to give them a second chance. As terrible as it was, I don't want to write them off just yet.
What did you order?
Runza really disappointed me. What did I order?
Yeah.
I think it was a regular Runza. Like, I'm going to sound like someone who's not from Nebraska because I'm not, but it
Probably
was just
got the
like
number one.
standard.
Yeah,
it was the standard Runza. It was absolutely horrible. So I don't know what to do. I feel conflicted. Like, do I put myself on the line and really my body on the line to try Runza a second time?
A Runza is like loose meat stuffed into kind of a closed-in bun with cheese.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was the worst meal I've ever had in my entire life, or worst fast food experience.
We all catch people on different days.
The one thing I will say is, if you were a creator or CEO or founder of a fast food restaurant and you go with crinkle fries, you need to get your head checked.
I'm with you. I
don't even know how you begin to start.
I'm talking to you. Every chicken finger restaurant in America.
Why?
Crinkle fries.
Why?
There's a reason Chick-fil-A kicks all of your asses, because they went waffle fries.
Crinkle is the runt child of the French fry.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement.
So
Nebraska's got runs. I think there's several different states where you could do this in.
Yeah, I don't know, like, doing it at Chick-fil-A, I don't think it would be limited to Georgia. I think there's about 6 states where a proposal at Chick-fil-A is perfectly acceptable and downright romantic.
In Indiana, I think you got Pizza King. They got those all over the state. Have you guys
been
to the Pizza King?
No, I've never been there.
Used to have that was my first job at a college, was in Muncie, Indiana. So I got the full flavor there. They'd have like the phones at the booth. Yeah. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of states. You should probably, since you're such a foodie, Andy, this might be good for your next mailbag, is picking all 50 states. Where would you make the proposal in each of those states? You've already got at least like 10 of them.
Well, we got Illinois now, because Eli
Lou
Tells us
Malnati's
in the live
baby.
chat, can confirm in Chicago that I have a buddy who proposed at Lou Malnati's. That is tremendous.
Yeah.
Lou
I love
Malnati's is
me.
the
Where did you
perfect place to
propose?
Me?
Yeah.
At the spot we met.
Where did you
Which was
propose, Jesse?
In a bar.
I proposed at my wife's parents' house. We used to play the game of Clue. Like she has two brothers. We just kind of like, I don't know, we got into board games.
So
we were playing.
You proposed with Colonel Mustard in the study with the candlestick?
So I had a page designer at the newspaper I was at in Muncie, Indiana, and I asked her to make 3 special cards. One was of me, one was of the ring, and one was of the room we were in. So we doctored it. So the 3 cards that were inside were those 3 cards, and me and her 2 brothers kept tanking the game until she would be able to guess the 3 and then open them up. I think she was pretty confused about what was going on, but in theory, it was a good idea.
That is the most amazing proposal story I've ever heard. I feel like such an idiot by comparison.
Did you propose and did they say yes?
Well, yeah, but
okay, so then that's all that matters.
The story's not nearly as good. So when she finally did open the 3 cards, how did
didn't know what they were? Was confused. Like I made my guess. These are not those items. And then I got down on one knee and proposed, and I think she still wasn't sure.
You're not Professor Plum.
Yeah, that's right.
I proposed in our kitchen, so.
Good.
Okay.
There you go.
And she was very like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why'd you do
Get
this?
up?
Like, why'd you do this here? Because she was in the middle of cooking something, like cookies or something. And the reason why I did that was because I had all of her friends and family and all of my friends fly in. And I wanted her to be surprised for the party. So like I was going, where am I going to propose? Where am I going to propose? But if I would have done it any other way, she would have figured out that the party was there. So it was a terrible proposal. And she was kind of like, wow, you put in no effort to this at all. And then at the end of the night, she was like, okay, I get it now.
Then you totally redeemed yourself.
Yes.
Well, we're glad that you've committed to us here at the Andy Staples Show and Friends by clicking subscribe, be it in podcast form or on YouTube or wherever you're getting this show, because we provide it in every way possible. But please, by all means, keep doing that. Keep telling your friends, hit subscribe. We're going to answer some 5-star questions next week. So leave us a 5-star review on Apple or Google Podcasts, and we'll go through them and grab your questions and answer them on the show. That's the surest way to get your question answered on the show. Gentlemen, it has been fun. I really want a Butterburger now. That may be dinner tonight. Cannot wait to find out what happens next when Brett Bielema comes back to Camp Randall. We'll talk to you later. The show is brought to you by Sling TV, the TV you love at a price you'll love. Check out sling.com for special offers.